Hello, this is Dr. Marky Blummer, and we are going to be talking about Module 2, which covers theoretical perspectives and the socio-cultural context. First, we're going to start with Module 2, Part 1, Theoretical Perspectives. That's the module part that will open this week. The things I want you to pay attention to, and again, follow along in the PowerPoint that goes along with this video presentation. Pay attention to there are materials and assignments that are focused on lesbian, gay, bisexual theories. So those things include the chapters that you're doing readings on, which are chapters 2 and 5, the theoretical perspective PowerPoint and video, which is what we're doing right now, and the Ellison reading and the Sumara and Davis reading, as well as a video that focuses on whether or not there is a gay gene. To help you have a chance to focus on and discuss some of the parts around lesbian, gay, bisexual theories, there is a theoretical discussion board that will open, and that'll be similar to the contextual discussion board, meaning that you will have to pick a response, answer questions in that area, and then ask questions of your peers and respond to their questions before the deadline. There are also materials and assignments focused on transgender, queer, and intersex theories. Again, the chapter readings, the PowerPoint, and the video you're watching now. And then actually a PowerPoint by myself and Dr. Gabrielle Ansara, who is of the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer, and Intersex Health Alliance, National Health Alliance of Australia. He's a senior policy officer. It's a presentation that we actually had an opportunity to do here at UW Stout. So there's video parts of that and the PowerPoint to go along with it, as well as a piece that we wrote about cisgenderism. So all of that goes into the TQI for the week. There's also a news article about our presentation that's a part of your readings. And to help you have a chance to process those materials, the theoretical discussion board will attend to that, as well as a cisgender questionnaire participation activity. Finally, there's materials and assignments focused on the P, or the polyamorous or polygamous theories. Again, the chapter discussions, the PowerPoint, and this video. Then a reading by Meg Barker and Langdridge, that's her colleague. I actually know Meg very well, and she's quite brilliant. There's also 2 news articles, one by Egbert and one by Reagan, to focus on. There's a mating strategies video for you to watch, and to go along with that video, there's a mating strategies participation activity. So those are the things that you'll be focusing on for this week, Module 2, Part 1. Really, there are multiple theories that you're going to be learning about and reading about that help explain members that are of the communities that identify as LGBTQIA and P. And I want you to think about each of these theories and how they can be affirming of people's identities with those particular identities, or potentially can identify orientation minorities as deviant, so how these different theories might actually be harmful. What you'll notice is the different theories that you'll see in this PowerPoint and that you'll be reading about include the structural functional perspective, the conflict theory, symbolic interactionist perspective, ecological systems theory, feminist theory, family systems theory, psychosocial theory, biological theory, and then a large chunk of it will be focused on queer theory. Some of those other theories you might be familiar with, but queer theory will probably be one of your first introductions to this theory. And make sure that you really pay attention to the materials around that, because it's very important. You'll also notice that as you look at the slides, for each theoretical perspective that you cover, in parentheses it'll say LGB or LGBTQIAP. That just tells you who is being focused on in terms of the application of that theory. So it'll help focus again with precision which theories you're to focus on when you look at them in terms of populations. I want to skip ahead just a little ways. When you get to the biological theory, you're going to see that focused on as a biological theory for lesbian, gay, bisexual. You're going to read a little bit on differences in maybe brain size between gay men. There's an area in the brain, you're going to see slides on this that show you different parts of the brain. One part of the brain is called the hypothalamus, which is actually responsible for what I like to call the 4Fs, which stands for feeding, fighting, fornicating. There's another F word you could use, but we're not going to use it here. And then Fahrenheit, which actually in this context means body temperature. And the hypothalamus regulates all of these kind of base functions. What they found is actually there's a difference in size in the hypothalamus area between gay cisgender men and heterosexual cisgender men. So that's one way that we kind of think there might be a difference in terms of etiology, biological etiology of being lesbian, gay, or bisexual. You're going to also watch a video about a gay gene that's been termed the XQ28 gene. And so you'll learn a little bit more about the perception that perhaps maybe it's something to do with genetics. What I really want to make clear to you is that in terms of sexual orientation, so speaking about the LGBs, it's still unclear what determines whether or not someone is same-sex oriented or heterosexual. And what I like to say is it's kind of like an analogy to handedness. Right now, we don't know why someone is left-handed or right-handed. What we do know is about 82% of the world population identifies as right-handed. So that leaves the remainder identifying as left-handed or in some cases ambidextrous. We really have no idea if there actually has never been found one single gene, a singular gene theory that shows us what handedness is and where it comes from. And we do know that there are certain places on the globe where there's a higher percentage of people who are left-handed. So we could say maybe it has something to do with family influence or family genetics or sociocultural influence. What I can tell you is, much like handedness, we can't answer whether or not why someone is lesbian, gay, or bisexual. In other words, why they like one sex, another sex, or both sexes. Kind of like why they use one hand, another hand, or both hands. So what I've kind of decided is that to me, to be someone who's affirming of people, it really doesn't matter to me what the etiology, what the etiological reason is behind sexual orientation, because I'm supportive regardless. So it's the same end result for me. It doesn't matter why. So I've stopped asking that question, but I understand that a lot of people ask that question. Okay? You're also going to see biological theory used around transgender and intersex. So you're going to have an opportunity to look at typical prenatal differentiation, internally in terms of genitalia, externally. You're also going to look at sex differentiation in the brain, specifically in the hypothalamus and the cerebral hemispheres. You'll read on that and you'll hear a little bit on that. You're also going to learn things like, much like genitalia tends to start out for everyone in utero in a very female typical pattern. Brains start out in a very female typical pattern. What we mean by that is, back to the hypothalamus, there's an area within the hypothalamus known as the bed nucleus of the striae terminalis, or the BSTC area for short. And this particular area starts out in a female brain pattern when we're in utero. And what happens is androgens are released at key times during pregnancy, androgens being testosterone hormones. And during those testosterone surges, the first one happens between the 6 and 8 weeks. That's responsible for the creation of male genitalia, as well as the XXXY chromosomal factors. And then what can happen is, at other times, androgens are released in utero, which can actually masculinize the brain of both boys and girls. Lower androgens, if there isn't as many released, then what happens is people's brains tend to retain a female brain pattern. Okay? A male brain has 44 to 60% more neural correct connections and denser cellular network in the BSTCs than do female brains. And all of this is regardless of your chromosomes and regardless of your genitalia. So your brain is actually, it actually is where your gender is held, so to say, okay, or your sex. And so behavior of the sexes is biologically reflective or brain reflective. So a person might appear as a woman on the outside, they might have the chromosomes of a woman, but if their brain was masculinized in utero via these high doses of androgen, then they might have a masculine brain. And that's some recent research that we're starting to see. What this means is then that this is why they start to kind of think that being transgender might be related to the brain just having a male pattern, but your body is a female pattern, so to say, or having a female pattern in your brain, but your body is a male brain, a male body. And so this is the kind of research that we're starting to see now in terms of brain and transgenderism. Now the question really becomes, though, however, that we can't actually know, how many doses of androgens are released and when, because we can't do that research. Clearly, we can't get pregnant women just doses of androgen and see what happens to people's brains, okay? But we have looked at autopsies of people who identify as transgender women, which is someone who's male to female, and they show a BSTC female typical pattern in their brain. Okay, so that's just some of the recent research. The other thing I want to draw attention to you for is the conflict in biological theories as they apply to polygamy. Research has shown that in 32 countries where polygamy is practiced, at least 5% of married women have found these types of answers for what's going on. So polygamy increased when there's a scarcity of males in the population. Countries heavy in infectious disease have more polygamous marriage. Women in disease-prone countries may prefer highly disease-resistant men to father their offspring, leaving less desirable men without mates. And there is evidence that women care more about physical attractiveness in these countries and having a higher sex drive, men having a higher sex drive. Finally, the conflict component. So those are both biological reasons for polygamy. The conflict theory part is having economic resources facilitates polygamy for humans consistent with resource defense polygyny in birds. Thus, there are more polygamous wives in countries where men can monopolize wealth, whether in terms of earned income or farmland. And this really has been shown time and time again in the research. So polygamy isn't happening for stereotypic reasons. Things like, contrary to the assumption, it isn't happening because of poverty. It isn't happening because of oppression to women. It isn't happening because of some sort of backwards custom. And the thing of it is one question people ask then is why polygamy survives mostly in underdeveloped countries close to the equator and why it is so unpopular in developed countries. Well, here's why. First, there isn't a scarcity of resource, a scarcity of men. In fact, in developed countries, usually there are more men than women. Second, colder winters make it impossible historically for mothers to raise children without substantial help from their husbands. So there's resources that are available because it's cold weather and you have to have help from a partner. Finally, the most important reason is that polygamy is out of place in the modern world in most cases, and that it works best in agricultural societies where children contribute to farm labor and care of livestock. So we really don't see it in those places for those reasons. Finally, last but not least, definitely look at the queer theories. Look at the usefulness of the queer theories. Very important. And now I invite you to move into your own readings, videos, PowerPoints, discussion board postings, and participation activities. Thank you.